mercy. I love being reminded that it is what happened at Christmas that brings us right here to this very time, to this very place today, right? It's wonderful. So somebody said to me this morning, why do we still have the nativity up? Why do we have all the stuff on the altar? And why are you still wearing gold? And I said, because it's festive and I should be wearing gold. Because I want to always be reflecting God's love, especially when J. Jubilee is here. Yeah. I'm really glad to see him this morning. This week has been an unprecedented week. I could say that each and every Sunday I stand before you, because this week lots of stuff happened at MCC Richmond that we did not plan on. Who knew we were going to get tagged, right? By people that decided that our church needed to carry the sign that God is gay. I loved it. I was like, well, isn't that interesting? And when Sherry Baxter called me to tell me that had happened, I said to her, well, did they tag it with a symbol? Because if it was a gang, they usually put their gang signature there. Or is it a message? She goes, oh, it's a message, all right. And she told me what it said, and I said, that's wonderful. And she said, what? I said, we're going to take it for all it's worth. We're going to let the media know. And don't you know, they came down and talked to us, talked to me, but only after they did a little bit of investigating. Channel 6 News got it right. Channel 8 News, they named the wrong church, but that's okay. I'm sure those people at that church are like, what? But this is what happened. The reporter Sean had sent a message in the office to Channel 6 News, and Sherry had called them because there was press on Tuesday morning about the monuments, and Sherry said to them, but you forgot about the church. And so they found it very interesting. They called the Richmond Police Department. The reporter called the Richmond Police Department to find out, what the suspected activity was and why this would be done. This is what the 3rd Precinct said when they called the detectives there. The detectives said, are you talking about the church on Park and Davis? And the reporter said, yes. They said, oh, that's Reverend Kenny Callaghan's church. I feel sorry for whoever tagged that church. Because he'll want to talk to them and remind them that God loves them just the way they are as well. And wouldn't you know, that was the message that was that they kept in the interview with me. And I said to them, I'm excited that they tagged our church. And the reporter said, what? I said, yeah, because you're here interviewing me, and now this community will get to have a free message of what we stand for, and that is God's inclusion here. And what they didn't put on the TV was, then I went on to say, we do not believe that God is gay, because God is not limited by gender or sexuality or race or riches or poor. God loves all people just the way they are. And the reporter said to me, really? I said, yes. And you might want to come on Sunday morning at 10:45 to hear that message. But it was interesting because after that interview, which lasted all of about 15 minutes, the camera guy came up to me and he said, it's interesting, this were his words, it's interesting that you seem very confident and you know exactly who you are. And I said, oh, it's taken me a long time to get here. But what I celebrate is being exactly who I am at all intersections of my life. And that's just the way it is. And some people love it and some people don't, but that's just who I am. And that goes hook, line, and sinker with what I was studying on Monday and Tuesday in this sacred text. The baptism of Jesus has been a debate. Oh, I can't wait. The Sunday school should talk about that. Because they were having this big debate today. I don't even know what it was, but they were going at it, and then they were laughing. Scholars have done the same thing when you talk about Jesus' baptism. And this has been the issue. Why would Jesus need to be baptized? Why? Was it that Jesus had done something wrong that we don't know about? Because shady brings shady, right? They wanted to catch Jesus doing something shady only because they themselves had been shady, right? It makes us feel better when we find out that someone else would do the same thing we do. I don't think that's the point. And I don't think that baptism is limited to the forgiveness of sin. There are a lot of churches who believe that. I am not one that teaches that. Because I believe that God does love us just the way we are, and that God's love is always present in our lives. So therefore, why do we need to be forgiven of any wrongdoings to inherit God's love? It doesn't make sense. Scholars have been debating this for centuries, and they have yelled and screamed at each other and all of that. But I think the point is this. Do we really believe that we can be loved by God just the way we are? It has nothing to do with God's love. It has everything to do with our willingness to accept that God can love us, can really, truly love us, knowing all about us. Now we're meddling, but that's okay. Because this text reminds us that in our baptism, in our understanding of God, that God, what happened when Jesus was baptized? And every single one of the Gospels agrees with this. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That at Jesus' baptism, the heavens opened, the Spirit of God came down, and a voice said, "This is my beloved, and my favor rests with my beloved." I think this text, the more important part in this text, is not that God is limited by any behavior that we might have in being baptized, but that we are given an identity in baptism. In our acknowledgement of God's love for us, we are given an identity of being what? The beloved of God, on whom God's favor rests. I love that, because Jesus at the time of his baptism had the assurance that he was the beloved of God just the way he was. Being an inheritor of God's love had nothing to do with Jesus doing things right or wrong. It had nothing to do with anything that Jesus did. It had everything to do with God's desire to let Jesus know that God was with him. Because all people are the beloved of God. And I think that part of the reason that Jesus needed to know that is because of the ministry that he would inherit. The ministry that he was willing to do. Because Jesus was going to go through times where he questioned what was happening. I'm sure he was frustrated. And yet he needed to know, and he had the assurance that God's favor rests with him, and that he was the beloved of God, just the way he was. That's very important, because how many times do we go through things that we don't understand? How many times do we go through things that rock our world in a way that causes pain? When we lose somebody, when a relationship is over, when we go through a health crisis, it can be very difficult when we have seasons of doubt and fear to embrace life knowing that everything is going to be okay. And yet at the same time, this passage reminds us that we are the beloved of God, just not on Sundays, just not when we feel good, just not when everything's going the way we want it to go, but we are the beloved of God all the time. And it doesn't have anything to do with us. It has everything to do with the way that God loves us and God accepts us. Just not when we're doing things that we know are good. When we do those shady things too. God loves us just the way we are and calls us the beloved of God. I've been thinking too about how that sign was something. God is gay. Well, why is that not something to celebrate? And then maybe the tagger was doing just that. Was celebrating that for them, they see God as gay. Someone said, well, Pastor, don't you think that's a little Pollyanna? And I said, well, why not? But could it not be that God is gay? Let me tell you, not only was I able to be interviewed on the news, but it has been interesting, the reaction from our neighbors. There was one neighbor that called Sean and said that this individual, he has a passion that whenever there's graffiti, that he wants it removed as soon as possible because he doesn't want anybody to be afraid, or he doesn't want his town or the fan to be reflective of that. And so he said that he wrote a grant through the Fan District Association to whenever he sees graffiti, that he can get it removed. And wouldn't you know, it is the same exact company that he works with, that the city works with, to remove the graffiti. And I am thrilled that it is still up there, because it has lent for lots of conversation. But when did we ever think that somebody living on Monument Avenue would call us and say, what can I do for you? Can I take this graffiti away? Or, the other interesting thing is, as I've walked Bentley the last couple of days, I've had the most amazing conversations with people. Some are our neighbors and some I don't even know, who said, what do you think about that tagging on your church wall? I said, well, somebody had something to say. It wasn't me. But so many wonderful conversations have happened because of that simple act. And so we could see events in our lives as causing us trouble. But do events of our lives, do they allow us an opportunity to experience God in a different way? Does it give us opportunity to be able to know who we are in relationship to whose we are? Knowing that no matter what happens to us, there is always something good that will come from it, because we are what? We are the beloved of God. God reminds us that God's favor rests with us. The board struggled with this. John told you today we were finishing the budget, and then the bottom line looked like we were going to be not meeting our budget. And I was so angry about that. And poor Kurt was like, ooh. Because I said to the board, how can I stand before the congregation and tell them all this fundraising that we've done this year was not enough? That the generosity of people and the offerings was not enough. How can we say that? And they all was like, well, the numbers say it, Pastor. Right? And so none of us liked that reality. And then the next time we met, I came back with the only thing I knew how to claim. And I asked the board, can we trust this $8,000 to God? And in all of her wisdom, Sherry Drees was like, well, and then she said, I think we can. And then one by one, every other board member that was able to be at that meeting, we decided that we had to claim that God was bigger than $8,000. And what did we inherit here? much more than $8,000. And so I remind you, look what God can and will do through willing people. The other thing that I think is important about this text is that when Jesus was assured of his identity as the beloved of God, when he was reminded that God's favor rests with him, that happened before his ministry started. In the Gospel of John, John has Jesus picking his disciples right away as soon as he was baptized. But the other disciples, as soon as he was baptized, he was tempted in the wilderness. And I think I'm so glad for that. In Matthew's gospel, Jesus is tempted by Satan. And this is where he was tempted. At the core of his relationship with God. Remember when Jesus was out in the wilderness? Satan came to him and said, "If you are the Son of God." And I'm sure Jesus was like, "Oh, hell no. You didn't go there. Because I know that I am the Son of God. And there is nothing that you can do to change that reality in me." The question is, can we be people, as we step into the ministry that God has called each and every one of us to, when we are tempted, or when we are going through a difficult time, can we with the same assurance stand up and say, "Oh no, there's going to be solution because I'm a child of God. Because God says I'm the beloved of God just the way that I am. And I know that it can be difficult to hold on to that, but I believe it's possible." I had a very strange time in my ministry at St. Matthew's Lutheran Church in North Hollywood, California. I'll tell you, I worked with somebody that was going through her own difficulties, and she took it out on me, right? Every single thing I did in that ministry was not good enough or wrong. It didn't matter what I did. It was always wrong. She would always point out I had made a typo or something, and it drove me crazy. Until one day, she decided to get personal. And she said to me, "Oh, and look at you trying to think you're cute with all those new things on and all that stuff. You shouldn't really wear that shirt. You know, it doesn't really fit you all that well." And I had enough. And I said to her, "You know what? You cannot talk to me this way anymore." And she had the nerve to say, "Oh, yes, I can. I am your supervisor. I'm the senior pastor here, and you are not." And I said, "It doesn't matter if you're the senior pastor or not. I'm a child of God, and I deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. And if you can't, do not talk to me anymore." And I said, "Do not talk to me anymore." And you know what? That day, the relationship changed. Because you can be my supervisor and tell me all that I'm doing wrong at work. But when you try to attack the clothes that I wear or my person for no good reason, I'm not having it. I am not having it. And I had to end up leaving that church because it was the council who said, "Well, she's the senior pastor." I said, "Good, that's good information." But you know, even in that, when I left that congregation, it was amazing because I saw God do the impossible. When I made that decision to leave, God had already planted the seed and opened up another door. Because don't you know, I got a call from my friend Pam Chalice, who said, "We're willing to call you down here in Long Beach if you'll make the drive." And I said, "Oh, hold up. Does the bishop know about this?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Good, because I'm ready to go." I'm ready to go. You see, God had already opened that door. Just like God had already had the plan to cover that $8,000. Just like God already has a plan to meet you where your need is. But I implore you to know who you are. You are the beloved of God, and God's favor rests with you. Names are so important. And so in our claiming and daring to believe that we are the beloved of God just the way we are, changes everything. There are names that have been placed on us. We live in a society and in a time that people want to define who we are by many, many names. Just not, but it's heavy. Some of those names might be Democrat. Some of them might be Republican. Some of them might be liberal. Some of them might be faggot. Some of them might be lesbo. Some of them might be gay, transgender. And those names can be used so horribly that they hurt us. They hurt us at the core of our being if we allow them to. I would ask you right now to just spend 10 seconds thinking of those names that you have been called that have caused you pain, that have caused you to question yourself, that have caused you to question God's love for you. Yeah. Did you notice it got very silent in the room? Because it's hard to think of those names. I would also invite you right now to hear God saying to you, no, you are not that. You are my beloved. You are named and claimed by God just the way you are. On you, my favor rests. And I believe it's because of the transforming love and grace of God that you can hear God's desire to take those names from you, to bring you to a place of a different kind of wholeness. I believe God would say these words to you: I will change your name. You shall no longer be called wounded, outcast, lonely, or afraid. I will change your name. Your new name shall be confidence, joyfulness, overcoming one, faithfulness, friend of God, one who seeks my face. And as you claim that truth, the way that you'll live into it more fully is to give it away to someone else. Thank you for being open to God working in your life. Thank you for the tears that I see now on your faces. Because I believe God is doing something beautiful in and through you, just the way you are. So claim your identity as the beloved of God. And watch God do amazing things. Amen? Amen. Let's stand and sing together.